can. You're the host, right?
It's so annoying. All right, we'll go live on Facebook.
Dewitt, are you in Wisconsin?
No,
Where are you?
Boston.
Oh, I saw a picture of you. I thought it was a Wisconsin picture.
All right, I'm going to mute everyone and throw to Mark. You should be able to unmute yourselves though, but Jonathan and I help out if you struggle. Everyone and throw to Mark. You should be able to unmute yourselves though, but
That was weird.
okay. Oh, that was
That
because
was the
Facebook.
Facebook
I had to
recording,
turn the
yeah.
Facebook off.
Because no, it repeated itself. It was like, you know, some kind of time loop that happened for a second. But anyway, I'm so delighted that all of you have come here today to celebrate my birthday. And by the way, this is also Lip Balm's 100th show since the pandemic began. And as you know, we will never give up. We will continue and give you amazing shows as long as we can. And just to give you an idea, next up we have Tara Betts, Sadia Agostini Bostic, Terry Ellen Cross Davis. That's on September 3. On September 10, we have Anjali Mitaduva, Susan Bloomberg Casson, Whitney Scherer, and Yelena Lambersky. And on the 17th, we have a flash fiction show with Meg Procrast, Jeff Friedman, Michael Keith, Robert Scotolaro, and Kim Ching Ki. And that just for starters. We also, up the line, have Tracy K. Smith appearing at some stage. I believe it's in October. Anyway, thanks so much for joining my birthday party. And I'm so curious to hear how my work sounds from other voices. But let me just first introduce my co-host, Jonathan Penton, who founded Unlikely Stories in 1998. He's since led his editorial and management assistance to many literary and artistic ventures, including the New Orleans Poetry Festival, Rigorous, and Big Bridge. He founded Unlikely Books in 2005, and Unlikely publishes 3 to 5 books of poetry a year. He's organized literary performances and performed himself across the United States. His poetry books are Last Chap, Blood and Salsa and Painting Rust, Prosthetic Gods, Standards of Saturday, and the free e-chapbook Backstories, which you can download from Argotist eBooks.
Oh, you expect me to say something now? Okay, I can do that. I wanted to read something of Mark's, and I wanted to read something that I was pretty sure no one else would read, so I grabbed This Wasted Land. I don't know if you guys have seen this book. It's from Lavender Ink. It's a fabulous book. What it is, it's Mark's tongue-in-cheek retelling of the wasteland with hundreds of absurd footnotes by Tom Bradley. Really ridiculous stuff, deliberately ridiculous stuff. Though the poem itself is plenty funny, and I'll just read from it. This is the beginning of part 5, What Water Drowns Out. And there's German in here, so that'll sound terrible from my voice. What water drowns out. After the sweat and the mired grimace, after plucking the shards of stars from our souls, after wiping our smiles from cut glass, then the tired cracks, and in truth, no wonder, as this gestalt beyond the line of sight now comes alive. And the slow flow of a bark or deep, deep, deep into a watery afterlife. And time, an echo, time a cuckoo, all gone. Ta-da! Ka! Cuckoo. O minstrel blood of the sordid whore, this may just be the language of four-headed dogs. And those gondolieri, wild ones with their coppery manes, hardy and thorned. Rare specimens of Nephilium seated on a sordid beach by Set and his flock of fanatical falcons. In anticipation of a lifetime of treasures, they clutch their golden rods, their silver staffs, or wave bejeweled spears to meet a cloven-hoofed father god, or some say to kill a giant serpent named Apep. And on his shoulder, man, a mercurial ghost, but those mingling coils of animal souls to light a path across the water into this underworld. Imagination, then, the requisite liquid of fertile soils. Imagination, then, how man was created in a deluge. Water in the eye, but where's the thunder, Dr. Ripley? Is this where the language of four-headed dogs is the silence upon the valley? Der Wille zur Macht. And our kiltless Scotsman, bringing up the rear again, moving the end of the oar to rest upon his cleft chin. Pinch your nose, or the stench will drag you low. This is no Firth of Forth. This is the mother of all. Hold on tight, and don't let her go. Thank you. This Wasted Land, very funny book. All right, up next, let's hear from Cassandra Atherton. Cassandra is an award-winning writer, scholar of prose poetry, and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. Her most recent books of poetry are Pre-Raphaelite, Leftovers, and Fugitive Letters. She is currently writing a book of prose poetry on the atomic bomb with funding from the Australia Council. She co-wrote Prose Poetry, an Introduction, and the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry. She is commissioning editor for Westerly Magazine. Cassandra, what have you got for us?
I got two shorties from two of my favorite things. I'm going to read from Here Comes the Night Dust, because I'm a bit of a romantic at heart, and I kind of like those tender moments that Marc has. This one is more of a sort of a clever one that has the great intertext of Macbeth. So I'm going to read that first. It's called Wren Dreams of Macbeth's Alter Ego. Isn't this where the hero was born? Right here under the eaves of our weeping willow? Observe. The birds have returned to nest on his broad shoulders, and the seeds scattered about his well-walked feet. They attract all manner of sentient things. Watch how the snow falls and sings in positively charged flecks of white matter, conjuring a chain of able-bodied successors. And no, they don't fly off seeking islands of nepotistic Darwinian metamorphosis, Kafkaesque bureaucracy, or Nabokovian double signifiers. And wasn't he swinging high when he first kissed you that midsummer's eve beneath a sword that saved the ravaged soul of a breathless, booming nation that night your father came pummeling out of the madhouse? And weren't those the eyes that burned a road straight through those cantankerous mountains? So that's from Here Comes the Night Dust. I do love the title of that. And then I have a sneak peek from the City of Lemons, because the City of Lemons is the coolest thing at the moment for me. It comes from, I guess, a prose poetry novel called The Age of Occasions. And I'm going to read one that has a kimono in it that is quite beautiful. And I believe it is illustrated. I have a sneak peek at the illustrated edition that Marc has at the moment. So the room was bare, but two white kimonos hung in the closet, perfectly pressed, and they felt like clouds against our skin. Two ladies entered, their hands clutching bare midriffs hovering there, vibrating almost. We were offered a choice of fruit tea or alkaline waters. They instructed us in the ways of the lavatory, presented us with towels and tongs, little scraps of paper with dicta and fortunes. May you always lower your head, stand upright and don't slouch. Or in 3 days and nights you will be dead, but tonight is your greatest fortune. Or opportunity knocks to all who call. And what else? 3 bars of soap, one for the skin, one for the heart, and one for the soul. May she be saved. And an enamel picture of a girl general in all her medals and splendor, our good mother. At the end, the story has to hold together. Here you shall find these things that tug us all hither thither. You can call them strings. I do. So, Marc, are you going to do Larissa's bio and I do yours, or will I do Larissa's as well?
I was thinking you'd do Larissa's and then Larissa would do mine, but I'm totally fine with either way.
That's all good. That's all good. I can do Larissa's. Lip Balm co-founder Larissa Shmailo is a poet, novelist, translator, editor, writing coach, and critic. Her most recent novel is Sly Bang with Spite and Dibble. Her poetry collections are Medusa's Country with Mad Hat, Hashtag special characters with unlikely books. In Paran with Blaise Vox. And the chapbook A Cure for Suicide with, I'm going to get this wrong both times, I have to say it today, Savannah Bava. Come on, well, just blame it on my Australian accent. I'm sure I'll be corrected by Gloria. A new poetry collection, Dora Laura, is forthcoming from Unlikely Books. Larissa's poetry albums are The No Net World and Exorcism, for which she won the New Century Best Spoken Word Album Award. She is the original English language translator of the first futurist open opera, Victory Over the Sun, performed at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Garage Museum of Moscow, and the Brooklyn Academy of Music. Larissa leads the workshop Writing Resilience for people affected by trauma, addiction, and/or mental illness. And her new book is the fabulous Writing Resilience Workbook. Please see more about Larissa at her website, www.larissashmailo.com. Larissa,
Thank
over to
you so much. Thank you so much, Cassandra, and happiest of birthdays, Mark. I'm going to read from two short ones from Leaning into the Infinite. Unreliable narrator. Should I be stumped by the greatness of God, or, unlike his decisions, should I be surprised how arbitrary these fields of gold and how they're woven into a story? Who then is the protagonist when trillions of single cells all think for themselves or together? Shall I celebrate my insignificance in a 3,000-year-old book, or should I be surprised how a wave of snow curls in hesitation, as if it might be looking for an ocean? And the next one has a little bit of Vispo in it, but I'm going to read it and do the Vispo orally. So, in the penal colony, not from the gagged mouth, it knots and tangles in the larynx, and the chain simply groans have done it, have it etched to the bone. It's all in the pointed nib of the writer's dark truth. In an enlightened moment, the bewildered gasps alone. He knows he is condemned. He shall be bound nude by his feet, sprung by his neck, stretched from his hands. He is bound to intone. No doubt in guilt, but doubt your own compassion, he says. When in doubt, doubt blind faith, but then there's another voice within, the sound of an erudite soul chanting praises to a virtuous God. The uniformed eats his hat, rejoices in the cast iron life ahead, in the words, how you should love to squelch them beneath your boots like vermin. Just be a good citizen, be just. And as the boat leaves the island, you stare at an inner rust and think, perhaps it is time to repair the clock. Okay, I will now introduce our birthday boy. Marc Vincenz is an Anglo-Swiss-American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published 20 books of poetry, including more recently, Einstein Fledermaus, The Little Book of Earthly Delights, A Brief Conversation with Consciousness, There Might Be a Moon or a Dog, Gazebo Books Australia, 39 Wonders and Other Management Issues, forthcoming from Sport and Duivel, and The Pearl Diver of Irunmani, forthcoming from White Pine Press. An album of music, ambience, and verse, Left Hand Clapping, is forthcoming from Tree Torn Records. Vincenz is also a prolific translator and has translated from the German, Romanian, and French. He has published 11 books of translation, most recently an Audible Blue, selected poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz, just out from White Pine Press. He is currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincenz is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He has lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, where there are more bog turtles, eastern whippoorwills, and ocellated darners than people. Sorry about that. Please help me welcome Marc Vincenz.
Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Larissa. I purposely choose the most obscure Latin references to mammalia and life forms to trip up people when they're reading my bio. So the test is at the end, can they read it smoothly or not? And you did a good job. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and to celebrate my actually 56th birthday on the 100th show of Lip Balm. It's just such a joy and pleasure to have all of you in my life. And sorry, as you know, many of you know that I've been through several serious health issues in these last 4 years. In fact, nearly kicked the bucket about 3.5 years ago, but made it back, and nearly, well, almost thought I was going to kick the bucket again, but seems that my constitution is not getting in. And so I've decided I'm going to read a little excerpt also from City of Lemons, but from way, way later in the book. And everyone has been reborn from a cryogenic state, and they think they're around 800 years old, and we go from there. It has taken me years to acquire the local dialect. You came to it naturally. No grass stalk or pebble was left unturned in your eardrum. For me, sibling, it was more a necessity, a necessary evil, and so on and so forth. Had language evolved? Hard to say. Much had been clipped, pruned, plumbed, and so on and so forth. What more than to share a reflection at the bar with its ad infinitum, and so on and so forth. Upland from the grasslands is the steppe, so Herculean it steals your breath in its peat and moss. I have said before, but I'll say it again, the words are hard to come by. One day, out of the blue, we're drinking sassafras tea. The sun is setting violet and blue, overlooking the blue waves below. A man arrives dressed in blue. I recognize him somehow, but not quite. My brain's all a scramble now. Apparently, despite all the progress, there's no way to halt the aging process. The man is wearing blue shorts, a blue pith helmet, blue golfing shoes. No more gasoline stations, no more milkmen, no more cables and wires, everything toothless. Even here, 1,000 miles away from where it all began, in a nutshell, blue listens only to itself. In the party echelon, there are those who have been and those who are, those who must be seen and those who have a second car or a third eye. They'll hit you square on the nose, and that bump in their forehead will surely give them away. And everyone speaks against the wind. It's much better to ditch the flesh and drive off in a convertible, pulling any manner of load. There are those who harbor visions. At the farmer's market, someone slipped a poem into my pocket. It read, "To live a life full seems a luxury, a sobriety in all its gaiety. Just make sure it's never looking back upon itself. You were fingering through lustrous pearls from a Yorker and imagining the little oysters they came from. Love's labours not lost at all. You and I both members of the Parliament, each of us with our own hairpiece. Can you hear me, sibling? Like a crow, I go on, and I'm also looking for scraps for discarded wrappers, the gnarled rind of an old watermelon, and the slippers, those tattered tartan slippers. Apropos, you should really wear your red hat, darling. It suits you best in the chambers. Democracy. What a funny word. It's all about the labels, isn't it? When they swoop down from the balustrade with their fateful decree. You tell me it's all in the head. What isn't, I said, meaning it, but then I've forgotten what I said next. And now I'm going to hand this back to Cassandra, who will lead this wondrous show that I am waiting with bated breath to hear and see.
Thank you everyone for coming. I'm bound to mangle or not say something in the bio you were hoping I did with my mad Googling last night. So please feel free when I introduce you to add anything that's illustrious that I've left out, because there were too many honors to fit into most of the bios. And if I mispronounce, please feel free to correct me, but I do always blame it on my Australian accent, which is sometimes a lie and sometimes true. So we're going to kick off with amazing Ben Mazur. He is a poet and editor. He is co-editor of Art and Letters. The exciting news we're announcing today is that he is editing Marc's selected poems for Poetry Voila. I'm sure I didn't get that one right. He can correct me. In India, he has 1 trillion books of poetry and you should read all of them. Ben, can we get you to kick off the birthday celebration?
Yes. Yes. I'm over here.
Hi, I can see you.
Okay. I'm editing Marc's selected poems for Poetry Walla in India, in Bombay.
That's so exciting. That's good. I don't know how you're gonna like choose them. How do you, maybe you'll get a tip from today with people's favorites. You never know.
Yeah. Do you have me on the screen?
We do, yes.
Oh, because I mostly just see you.
Oh, well, that's all you need to see anyway. No, it's just in your preferences, but we can see you full screen and you can check yourself out on the recording. So if you've got a couple of Marc Vincenz poems for us, that would be awesome.
Yes, I have 2. I'll read 2 now.
Thank you.
Story seen in the carvings. 1. Whose eyes are closed? Slow beginnings, early mornings. As clouds disperse, the sky unravels. Ahead, voices wrap around trees, nudging streams and whispers. What is the order of water now? What is the color of water now? A great solidarity dwells in light, and in spare branches, eternity finds a sound. The clacking of nail on wood, and in the fog, its snowing leaves. The breeze, a sniffle, the cloth of light descends. 2. The concealed motors of narrative. Aren't we made of light both ahead and behind? Dawnbreak, the furnace burns, the frames served on a door, fevered speech. I would die if I were a rodent. What a climate to come home to. What should move ahead or through? Heed the words and dream them, creature. Wavering daybreak from where black reigned alone. Knotted nose sipping old wine tangled in the future thought of, as if something we called flint might ink this all into infinity. And a train passes, sounding like a predatory creature seeking out a distant life. Together we are enclosed in a photograph, a reed that unwinds on pillowcases, blithely saying, touch me. And the frond of a leaf or petal, innocently living inside, says, let me stroke you too. That rising up through storm and weave, clearly executed, seems to explore in a single together. So then, why look back, my love? 3. Intensive care unit. Vaguely abysmal, the city, through our earthly architect, did his very best. Something's amiss. The rattle of the furnace, the hum of the vent, sends that hollow howl through the inside of the room, where another kind of snow, a night snow, follows childhood paths, as in the purest form, the roots of a wandering life. Slant veil of light mist across hilltops now. Words dressed with lemon and mint float inside the mind, and the partnership wanders through caverns of absentee bats. The silken sky plunges toward the shore, where swollen seabirds dart and dangle, and the wave's white eye stares on. A seamless pattern dapples the sands, sifting enough light to retrace our fading tracks. And the next poem I'll read is called On the Order of 12 Dozen. Cast in their shells, a hunter of feelings, a purveyor of aphrodisiacs, or as they said in the old days, a maker of fortunes. A wise woman once told me each dozen constituted a parade of tears, a scattering of kisses and condolences like leaves on a mound of snow. But then she asked, what was truly your bewildered moment? Imagine, she said, a dog comes upon a mouse. Bewilderment turns to excitement quickly. Or do you play solely for the benefit of the crows?
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks so much, Ben. Next, we have David Blair. He is a poet and a philosopher. He is the author, if the website I was looking at is correct, of 4 books of poetry, and Mad Hat Press published his first collection of essays, Walk Around, Essays About Poetry and Place, in 2019. We know him as a host with the most, who writes the best intros for people, and we've got him here today to read from Marc's brilliant oeuvre. David.
Hi, Cassandra. Happy birthday, Marc. Marc is a great poet. He has a carnivalesque imagination in books like The Wasted Land and The City of Lemons. You hear that. He also writes great short lyric statement poems. And he got me to put together a collection of selected shorter poems that'll be coming out next month. So I gravitate towards Marc's shorter poems. And here are 2 from the little book of Earthly Delights, which I wrote the introduction to. Affairs, schemes and subplots. Who lives in the city? Begging, taking bribes, crooked roads fork out in all directions. The banished stake out their heavy reputations on fresh air, unable to advance on their private interests. Illicit deeds felt too long, actors deep in their stage makeup, gathering their bundles. Who wouldn't want to end their days in the forests as an old man? Marc spends part of every day in the forest with his dog, right? And here's another poem from this book. And if you ever go to visit Marc, which I did this summer and I had a great time, the most beautiful way to get to Marc's house is to take Route 2 to the Berkshires, also known as the Mohawk Trail. So Mohawk days after Thomas Tranströmer. An air current mumbles a murmur from the woods like an old man's grumble. Then the turning point easing through the grates of the pine trees, the wolves locked in, admiring the bees in their drunken flight from bloom to bloom. At last, a bird shrieks high above beneath a single cloud, a dark island circles and circles in despair from everywhere. The hum of crickets like fountains, water churning, turning stone to spray, spray back into stone. And then Mark spends a little time at the waterfall. There. So happy birthday, Mark. I'm looking forward to hearing everybody else read too.
Thank you. That was beautifully read. Thank you so much. Next, we have Maxine Chernoff. Maxine Chernoff is everything. She is award-winning novelist, writer, poet, academic, and literary magazine editor. She has edited the long-running literary journal New American Writing. She has won a gazillion awards, and I have loved her prose poetry for a long time. So Maxine, can we get you up next, please? We're just unmuting you or helping you to unmute. You're still muted.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
There we go.
Okay.
Yay, we can hear you. Perfect.
Yep. Happy birthday, Mark. I wanted to begin by telling you, if you don't know, that you share your birthday with Sean Connery and Pee Wee Herman. So congratulations with that. I don't see a lot of their influence in your poetry, but I've chosen two that I think will represent your wonderful eye and ear. They're both from the Fortnightly Review, which is a British journal, and I'm reading 2 of the 7 or 8 that appeared in that publication. And also, I want to tell listeners, for some reason I can barely see today with or without my glasses, so wish me luck. Okay, this is called Species of Light. Intuition shaping as a physical act, then moving into the future of itself, and shuffling into the space before language, the muscular structure of emotion that is reflected, refracted, being seen by the future in the reflection. The not yet, yet not letting go, setting free of profitability. Deep time in millions of years, capitalizing on those momentary capillaries of light. That's the first one. The second one's a little longer. It's called Artificial Intelligence. They say it's autumn. They say the autumn will come with white sail. My mouth is always wide open to praise. Eternal youth is a gift from all that bring joy, the clouds or the gods. With a sweet tension, they lighten the load. How can there be bad love, you say? It all vanishes in dust and smoke, you say. Even those pressure pads leave something in doubt. Leave something in doubt in no one's, I'm sorry again, my phone is acting funny. Leave something in doubt in no uncertain words. The olive trees have seen most of your eras. Your changing of the guard, your wax seals and notary publics with your digital signatures and a fanny pack, tricks with your theaters and organic bistros. I wish I had a daughter whose name was Esmeralda or Josefina, a landscape of diversity to survey, a pledge, a ledge to lean upon, or a mantle or a lintel, and that Friday night when pines turn into palm trees. Honestly, I prefer to circle the earth and consider which one of those galaxies will soon be singing. Thanks a lot and happy birthday.
Thank you. And if you stay there, we've got Paul up next. So Paul Hoover is a poet, editor, and translator with a brilliant and extensive oeuvre, including a novel and a collection of essays. He has also edited New American Writing, and he has received 1 trillion honors for his work, and he's incredibly sage. So can we have you next, Paul, please?
Thank you. Happy birthday, Mark. You're a good guy. You spell your name with a C, and you're from Switzerland, I think. And you're a wonderful cook. Although I've never tasted your food, I know it's great. So I've chosen 2 recent poems that appeared in New American Writing so I can push the magazine. And also because I know them as an editor of the magazine. I like them for their philosophical vigor and their sense of first and last things, digging down into the essential where it all begins. So the first one is How the Story Begins, which appeared in the 2018 issue. Language, Michelle said, was created by positive deductions contrary to our thinking, the uncharted territory through which a small mind traverses. I am, said she, a bee gathering pollen, not to make honey, but to buy time. Charles's imagination was the instrument of evolution, to conceive that which occurred before it actually arose. Perhaps, though, as Francois surmised, they were all just merchants of each other's small infinity of light. And they wandered astonished through the market stalls of a small city made of jumbled words. Future was a place that fastened the tail end of all potential stories, imaginary voyages where the boat is a needle and the compass the sky. How they wished to learn what might lie beyond their last breath in the descent to the underworld of the self, and what currency of words might still be left behind. So spending words and paying attention. I think it's so odd that literature brings us to attention by being at attention, by being alert to the world, which Marc's work really is, as well as alert to the language, and how the world of language becomes the real world and vice versa. The second poem is To Discover Descartes. To discover the discarded, the forgotten, or once pervade in part toxic the heart of a word slithering towards small truths under a starry sky, and those thousand eyes of mammalian longing. Oh, to sleep among the scavengers and predators, but alive in the dark, obliterated in the pavilions of insects, in the wake of pollen and fragrance, everything filled in and used, but barely used up. The sparkles that catch the light of the passing car or trucks carting consciousness, or perhaps more aptly, a self-consciousness edging toward the ocean like a memory, transmuted, or a deep loneliness caving in on itself, where everything is water, where everything sinks. The brine, the gusts, a game of sea creature. It ends in mammalian longing. Happy birthday, Mark.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your words and thank you for your reading. It was wonderful. Next, we have Gloria Mindock, who is widely published in the USA and abroad. Her poetry has been translated and published into just about all the languages that Mark speaks. She's the founding editor and publisher. I'm going to go with Travina Bava. She can help me pronounce it. And she's coming to us live with COVID today. So that's a stellar effort on her behalf. So Gloria, can we get you to read, please?
Thank you. And happy birthday, Mark. And I have to say you're one of a kind, thankfully. And I hope your day is really great. And I'm going to be reading two poems from Beautiful Rush. And here it is. Okay, the first one, Rembrandt's Last Fruit. Of course, you'd like to ask God how long it took him to build an apple, and if the first was red or green, if it fit in the heart of the palm between the lifeline and the mind, and if there were snapshots of that first crunch. Perhaps he'd say each was a masterpiece, each perfect and spectacularly flawed in every single seed, conveniently inserted by children's fingers. Of course, you'd like to know what the devil said. Something about the seed being more than a metaphor. We all know it's easier to build an empire with many little fingers. God may be the eye of geometry, but isn't it all boggling how apples have spread across the globe, lending power and meaning to what is yet to come? Surely the soul of a woman is the sum of all her walks. So I ask you, what can enlighten a life any more than a pair of sturdy shoes. And the next one, I'm going to mispronounce the title, Simenon's Speck of Gladness. When the sea shakes the walls, an infinity of ghostly shoes, lines blue-eyed towns, where I am not yet dead, where I am not quite born. Thank you.
Thank
And
you
happy
so
birthday,
much.
Mark.
Feel better soon.
Thanks, I'm gonna go. Bye, everybody.
See you, get some rest. Shake that COVID.
Thank you.
Helen Ivory is next. She needs no introduction. She's one of our fave features. You all know she's a poet and a visual artist and that she's won an octillion number of awards. And Mad Hat is publishing her new and selected. So Helen, over to you, amazing person.
Oh, bless you. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Yeah, happy birthday to you, Mark. I'm pleased that we were able to join you from our English nighttime. It's 11 o'clock, well, 11:15 at night here. So I might turn into a bat anytime soon. I'm going to read two poems from Becoming the Sound of Bees, which I think it's a fantastic title for a collection anyway. And yeah, anyway, so this first poem is, I think, the first poem in the book, and it's called Static. In that year that was not a year, when the days were not like days, and the sky was birdless, we listened for the sound of bees, and hearing nothing but the wind box the panes, we began to hum and buzz and drone, becoming the grey matter before words. I love that. I mean, I love short poems, but yeah, you have to have everything in it, don't you, in a short poem. This one is called Cold Pollen, which it's a bit of folk horror, I feel, and that's kind of my kind of thing. So Cold Pollen. Father built this land from the mud up with his perfect green hands. Now 3 days on the moor, nothing to eat, and the birds have left us. Dead crackle of weed as the ground hardens beneath and the cold sings in our bones. We know foxes are hiding in hollows and the fish lie crystal still on the lake bed dreaming. Hunter's shack on the horizon, a crooked tooth whistling on a hillock, it's rammed shut, padlocked for thaw. What was it she said? Something about milkweed to soothe the child that may bring screaming. I know I should seek it out, but again my hand returns to that which lies within, and the door flies off into butterflies of rust. 30 years ago we settled east, but the moor swallows the heath and the desert swallows the moor, and the wind grows.
Amazing, beautifully read. It helps you have an adorable accent.
Oh, bless you.
We'll stay there because Martin's up next. So Martin Figura is a poet, photographer and performer, and an utter joy to have here. He's had poetry published everywhere. And with Helen, he runs the famous poetry reading series live from the butchery from their place in Norwich. And it's their anniversary today, everyone. So wish them well for their wedding anniversary. And over to you, Martin.
Thanks. Happy birthday, Mark. I was going to try and do, I'm going to read from Einstein, Fledermaus and Leaning into the Infinite. I was going to try and do them justice by reading in that deep American accent that Mark has, but I couldn't grow the beard, so you're going to have to make do with my accent. This is Visa Application. I've chose two poems that seem to reach across the ocean to how things are here too. So, Visa Application. More paperwork with boxes. Does the X mean what it says? And the tick is more than a tick, but a flea in the ear rather than a fly in the ointment. An upturned star, both legs reaching up and the all embracing a resolute Yes. Does the paperwork come in boxes? Who knows what she says? Yes. She with the horn-rimmed glasses, she with the cockamamie smile. The flea in your ear was rattling and buzzing and uncorking your mind. What was it she said? I have all the boxes. What do you have? And this one is Last Indian Summer, from, as I said, this one. Last Indian Summer, dawn to dark, toil is coming to an end, and water, that engine of change, gushes and fans, a new wave luring villagers to the metropolis, but not without subterfuge. Doesn't social history creep in from unexpected places? It was then they burnt the towns which give rise to steam, which fed the iron and greased the skids. The sun god of power could now be sold to the everyman of the everyday, giving the world its just deserts and a fixed rate of exchange. Thank you.
Amazing. We love you too. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here for so late as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kevin Gallagher, who is a poet, editor, political economist, and publisher. 2 recent books he's published with Mad Hat are docu-poetics, which is a fascinating genre, and he is ridiculously successful. So, Kevin, can we have you next, please? Maybe? Is Kevin here?
Yes, I'm here.
Yay!
Happy
Oh, you
birthday.
look fantastic. Oh, your
Happy
glasses
birthday.
are amazing.
I'm going to read Newton releases a little bird called Rocket from the Syndicate of Water and Light. If science were raised from the dead, or perhaps never dead at all, more a loop returning to its beginning before it ever ended, then the problem of the one and the many, those shimmering paradoxes wrung from the intuition of unity for the fountainhead of the same myth, might be resolved in the mirror of being, reflected back into the cycle and epicycle, the orb into the orb of a mysterious circular motion that comes from an unknown center, reaching the far-flung island fly specks in the Pacific between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer and the towering stone faces of giants staring upon the expanse of a lukewarm ocean. 2, burnout. Could it be that somewhere in the past there was a soul who knew what in the beginning intimated, and that someone terrestrial, but particularly cosmic, with imagination of an astrological power, found his armatures in fingers, counting those supernatural presences that plunge directly into the midst of things? How many hundreds of millions of years were disrupted when you walked across the bluffs, scraping the chalk from the underside of your muddy shoes? How a fire in your hand changed the world, or as Humboldt says, first man will deny, then belittle, then say he knew it all along. 3, coasting. From above the timberline, our figure follows a temporal order manifest in the grinding of the winds and her rains upon all our visible surfaces. And from within the maelstrom, a figure emerged, an aura so numinous, it disguised the soul, ground within its own time to peace and plenty. From the twilight of the gods, from the signs of life sprung from the sky river, or the greatest depths of a celestial ocean, from the sidereal to the synodic, the wave of arms that constituted the histories of those who had come before in legend. In the alternate spaces known is that the dark universal force of an original sin, as if that might be the center of the thing. 4, apogee. A reason for living, a reason for these lines of descent and those religious excursions echoing a holy order interlocked in its own unity. And that everything was a sign or signature of something else, the metaphor being the meaning behind the matter and what mattered. A code to be deciphered by those in the know. What was once magic became mathematics. The connections counted in the hologram, found in the polyphony in a single quivering note. Listening to the tuning of the sky, the riddle, a secret that could be unlocked by applying thought to evidence, the clues to which some divine creature had strategically placed in the great wide open. There was no other reasoning to it. Recovery. Here was the unbroken chain of wisdom handed down. The riddle would be revealed to the initiate. The archaic spirit was clearly alive. How shall we speak to those who are not born, said Galileo. These are secret thoughts. Will someday 24 signs on a single leaf seal the fate of man as he sails upon an ocean of milk churning with butter? Thank you. Happy birthday, Mark.
Thank you so much. You do look spectacular. I don't know how you read through the little slats on the green, but you did it beautifully. Thank you. Next, we have Peter Johnson. You all know him. He's prose poet, luminary, and brilliant novelist. He was the founder and editor of the Prose Poem and International Journal, and an international journal of the best prose poem and start again. You all know him. He is prose poet, luminary, and brilliant novelist. He was the founder and editor of the Prose Poem and International Journal, and editor of the best of the Prose Poem and International Journal. I think I did that twice. He can correct me. He has a spectacular collected and new coming out with Mad Hat, and he's a hell of a nice guy. So Peter, I'm sorry I mangled your intro. But can you read for us next, please?
Can't hear Peter. I don't see him.
Yeah, he's there.
There you go.
Yeah, hooray.
Yeah, you might have been better off without this. Mark, Mark's a great guy. Happy birthday, Mark. And I do have to tell you, you have to be a pretty secure male to be around Mark, because he's a great poet, a great editor, which we really haven't talked about. We could talk about that all night. He's a great musician and composer. He's supposedly a great cook. He's going to have to show me that. And I have a feeling if I said to him, but oh, you can't do ballet, that somewhere he'd have a pair of toe shoes. They'd pull out and then do that also. Like most of you, I'm very fond of Mark's shorter lyrics. And I think they prove, as Paul Hoover was saying, D.H. Lawrence's comment about poetry, that really great poetry is an act of attention. And I'm going to read two of the short ones from Leaning into the Infinite. I love this poem because all of his talents are at play. You just get that tightness of imagery and the mix of poetic and yet muscular language. You can almost hear the river in it. Word caught on the riverbank. By the river at night, water carries on at its own rugged pace. Within that, this crooked light, I shall give you my wildest words, for I shall not need them anymore. You see, even in their sameness, differences may arouse a desire to cast a pebble and watch it skim ad infinitum. When I am dead, you may project me upon your sunlight, that I may throw shadows across your face and the faces of those you hold close forever. Why is that such a hard word to catch? Again, we see the philosophical side too in the shorter poems, because you almost can hear the resonance of Heraclitus in this. And here's a real tiny one, and this is Mark doing his impersonation of Basho and doing it as well or better than Basho. Early autumn, wind-blown patter on the mirror of the lake, rippling thoughts broken at daybreak. What else now but a perfect plume of smoke? Just love that poem. Happy birthday, Mark.
Thank you so much. What is on your t-shirt? I'm sure everybody's thinking the same thing as me. You've got a little kind of bony hand with a
No, it's a peace sign. It's a peace sign. Peace sign and a skeleton. I got it. I don't want to go on about it. I got it. I got it when the Russians invaded Ukraine, and I think it's kind of a symbol that sometimes to get peace, got to have a lot of bad things happen. Now, didn't that just ruin the evening, or what? Go to the next person, okay? Go ahead.
We'll forge ahead. Thank you. Thanks so much, Peter.
Sure.
Next, we have Ray Barfield, who is a genius as well as a writer and a doctor. He's published 4 books of philosophy, a novel, and 2 books of poetry, with a 3rd one forthcoming if his website is up to date. He even has merch on his website, and I do love some merchandise. And it's his birthday as well. So, Ray, can we get you to read next, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, most of the website is fake. It's a setup for.
Is there really no merch? Can I? Oh, you've got the merch on. You sell those t-shirts on your website.
I'd like to offer this tree for $50 Australian dollars, if there are Australian dollars. Mark is the most fascinating. I've been interested in the relationship and the quarrel between philosophy and poetry for so many years. And when I came across Mark's poetry, I knew I had hit something new. And so I wrote a review of his astonishing book, A Brief Conversation with Consciousness. And I want to read the last 2 poems of this book. This is a birthday tree, by the way. Because he somehow brings in a level of history and political engagement and philosophical fascination, and yet at the same time is obviously writing a poem and not trying to write philosophy, political theory, or anything else. He's writing a poem, and he does it in a way I've never seen anyone do it. So these are the last 2 poems. The first one is the title poem, the poem that gave the title to the book, A Brief Conversation with Consciousness. And how the origin, down in the break where we dream and move forward, is not about the departed or their famines. The epic goes on to talk of great gods and their pestilences. Here the problem bursts open. The epicenter begins what occurred in the illumination. Bread, hard bread, pulped into reconstitution. Impassivity found a mind of its own, the mentality that arises from too much smoke. The hashish person cannot therefore be trusted to fulfill their lot, that breaking up of swallows, the civilization of things backing into prosperity preposterously. Scandalous that indeed we are owned by different gods, all wholly created, all exaggerated in that unit of social control and evictive evolution, a way that a police state with more subscribers than citizens, one fist over another, wary of its reign, moves northward toward the open seas where crossings are fed with former inscriptions, where the collapse is redacted and the people staring at the end of a voice, at the end of a vote, a probable creature of vice, then head south wind, embark land upon legend, where intellect is subjective consciousness, where in the model of religion, a crisis is all that is needed, where the gods, earning their functions and their proportions, simply vanished into distraction. Then an upsurge, where man alone faces that modicum, where theocracy induces a change of mind, a retaliation of conscriptions, a nascent symbol, a street to be, walked beside a head to be seen, a fetal position cherished, discussed over reputable wines, over the forsaken fallen, over the founding fathers, over the sparkling new city, over the Roman a day, the hierarchy, the weary and disturbed, the logic such that the idea of evil is where gods live, where that other face, that sometimes senseless passage is in others. It is said, if a horse enters a room, if a horse enters a home, then that household will be scattered. It is known. All right, here's the transition. This is like, for me, the crux of the book. The last sentence of this poem. Here lies an empty window. Now, the second poem I want to read is the last poem in the book, and it's called One More for the Road. And it has to be read in light of that last sentence that I read, because there's so much humor and hope in this thing. In this last one thing, let us not fail our forebears. No more pussyfooting around. Let us head straight for the light. But hold on, isn't that a moth to a flame, you say, lighting up that sweet ganja on the way to the market square, a place where all we creatures forage under the eaves? Old Man Tabernacle reminds you that anything you say will be taken into evidence. He grinds himself like an organ when he needs to. Emerge, sweet creature, and light up the way. That last sentence is the secret to consciousness. Man, he did a miracle in this book. Thank you, Mark, and happy birthday.
Thank you, Ray. That was amazing. What an incredibly joyful reading as well, and a birthday tree. I don't think anyone else can compete with the birthday tree. And happy birthday.
Thank you.
Next, we have Michael Anania, who is a poet, an essayist, a fiction writer, and a sailor, apparently, because he's on his boat. He has won so many prizes and fellowships, it's dazzling. His published work includes 12 collections of poetry, if the website's up to date, and his work is widely anthologized and it's been translated into all of Mark's languages. So, Michael, can you give us a couple of poems, please? Hang on, we have to get you unmuted.
There I am.
Perfect.
Am I unmuted now?
You are. We can hear your dulcet tones.
Okay, I've a brief note. Since I'm on the boat, I have no library here. So Mark sent me the poems that I'm going to read. And you can figure out whatever it has to do with where my situation. Anyway, happy birthday, Mark. It's hard to imagine anybody in our time more committed to the idea of poetry or with a deeper faith in its efficacy. I'm moved every time we talk. So here is Spectral Analysis, prose poem. Down at the port where the ribbons flow on Friday night, the pubs are crowded at 5. Old skippers congregate, drifting greedily into their old banter, who caught the most frightening fish, who came face to face with the deep eye of a squid, or barely escaped that bantering from an angry blue whale. Imagine what else they go on about. Long time coming, storm cloud on the horizon, beneath the weather, then above it. Here come the mackerel, the herring, the scores of transatlantic cod. Once this place was loaded with sardines on wooden barrels and sailed from here across the world. The fish could be scooped up by almost any hand. They came from as far as Siberia, followed by all the seagulls, and on 100 years of frostbite. Take this very can, over 100 years old, dented and rusted. The metals seep in, but the oil imported from the Cretan islands is still a thick emulsion. And when you bite in, the salt crystals crackle on your tongue, and the sardines are soft yet firm. Their skins have quietly braised in history, touched by cosmic background radiation. All's well with you, you say. I would hand you some fragments, some cold evidence, how they were herded onto the boats, steering in pain from cable burns, or those who died with wire across their eyes, or the cut and scrape of their gills against cold steel. How they came up from the other side of the planet to mate and spawn and breed where the most vital and vibrant river finds its source. That's a lovely poem. Ecosystem for an Anonymous Machine begins with a quote from Borges: "For the machinery of this world is much too complex for the simplicity of men." What is the interface of the natural world? Mind caught in the act, regret turned into disgrace. The pity of deceit when light breaks in indifference, or the magnitude of a mind bending at will. To what though? The stuff of theater, confusion of the breath snuffs out. What is wickedly divine and then awakened again by some fear that the old way, the nameless paths cross restlessly, where gods recite short poems behind this space, suspended and boundless, the doors shut. Then the ball begins, we dance in earnest. Are my eyes the same blue they once were? The loose cobbles are shifting, some street everywhere. We pause, take in the air, sensing what it once was. Pause again at the roots of a building planted with firm reason. The sky blurs, the source of the thing drained away into the ruts and gutters of the city. Heaven to be assuaged. The hectic has gone, the urban longing, the pitiful trees along the boardwalk, the full beginning, the dirt under nails, the kissing strangers, the drinkers and their fine wine imported from distant shores. Still the stone glistens, even as my lips grow numb. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for beaming in from your boat. We loved it. Thank you.
Well, I've got teak behind my head.
I see. I see. Next we have Dominique Vincenz, who is a recovery coach, a student and teacher of yoga, and a nature lover. And yes, she's Mark's sister. Hooray! I'm so excited for her to be at Lip Balm with us today. Dominique, could we get you to read something, please?
Absolutely, but because I'm Mark's brother, I get to say something else.
Of course.
Mark and I, everything you've said about Mark, everyone who's spoken so far, is true. He's also the best brother in the world, absolutely the best brother in the world, and the best friend you could ever want. And it's pretty amazing to be here and hear all the beautiful things you say about him, because there's more and it's all true. So I've chosen two poems. The first one is my favorite, from Mao's Mole, and it's called The Red Underpants. Well, they were just hanging there. What else would you expect me to do, especially when I'd known he'd worn them? Even more so when a breeze caught that lace edging and it fluttered ever so lightly, and that image that came to mind, something I had seen in an Attenborough documentary from the BBC. It was some sort of weird looking squid creature pulsing his tail wing against the black night of deep sea, and he stared through the camera right at me with his single one eye. And I swear he had a dirty look on his face, just like an Amsterdam window front lady enticing me into her plush boudoir. Anyway, they were there, frilly and lacy and red, and just caught with a dappling of breeze. So I slipped over the fence. There was no one at home. Stripped down to my buff and slipped them on. Oh, how they felt on my bare behind, like angels caressing my cheeks, like heaven cupping my balls. But just knowing I wore his underpants, his frilly red underpants, and knowing that somewhere, from far up on a rooftop, someone, perhaps one of his bodyguards, was watching me through a pair of binoculars, made my spine tingle and my skin goosebump. Number two comes from a Syndicate of Water of Night. It's the prologue from our ancestors' spaceship. For more things are sought than found, they said, and after the fires of desire and delusion have been extinguished, observe the change of the roll and the pitch of the wave. What were the sources of our impulse? What we don't know, we don't yet know. On those endless side paths, beware the obstacles of recollection and the immutable errors of knowledge. Here is a tribe who has been to paradise and heard unspeakable truths. They call them a natural interrogative, the promises of something that shaped itself in the making or was simply consumed in whirling tongues of fire. We always constructed our own cosmologies and never forget, things are not what a language names them. Is not the cruel commander also the faithful husband, or the resourceful hero, the lying con man? Is not the he in search of his identity also the everyman? From the surface of an unpeopled world, we followed knowledge like a sinking star far behind a sun where islands rising out of the sea were hammered in waves of unlimited time. Imagine strong stories that grant immortality, where in their particular chasm, cheaters and flatterers whisper themselves back into the past. All this long before the chronicle of travel, before the first account of war, when there was still that quality of déjà vu. Happy birthday, Mark. I'm going to come see you soon.
Thank you, love. That was amazing. And
Yeah,
yes,
that was brilliant. Sorry. I had to say that was brilliant, but you said it was brilliant at the same time. Did you want to say anything else to your amazing sister?
I think I'll tell her later, actually.
Okay. Secret sibling secrets. Robert Archambeau is next. He is a poet, an editor, and a literary critic with a slew of awards and honors and a devilishly good sense of humor. There is nothing he hasn't done. Robert, Bob.
Thank you. There's one thing I haven't done, but I'm about to do it, and that's this. I don't think I'm alone in saying the general vibe in the Zoom room is quite positive and celebratory, as it should be. And far be it from me to break a good vibe, but I'm going to do that because one of two things has happened. And I have to bring this up. Either Cassandra Atherton has misled me, or all you all have let her down, because she told me we would all be wearing hats. All right. And she had the hat and Mark had the hat. And I went to my basement, which is full of, as those of you who know, my problem with accumulating antiques is full of antiques. And I got my real regulation 1984 Devo Energy Dome out, which I have preserved from my youth out of loyalty to popular culture. And I said, I'll wear this. And I show up. And Cassandra's got a hat on, and Mark's got a hat on, and Jonathan has a hat on, but he always does. But look at the rest of you. Shame. Shame. All right. Now, we'll put all that behind us because we love Mark. And I'll say this. I was asked to say a few words about Mark before I read some poems. This caused me enormous anxiety because I am a critic by trade. And I meant to say words about a writer. So I went to Journalism 101 and I thought, we can do who, we can do what, we can do when, although you're getting old enough, Mark, that becomes embarrassing. We can do where, we can do why. And then it occurred to me, probably because of the powers of my energy dome being at work, it occurred to me, Mark, the question for you is how, which is to say, you're introduced today as an Anglo-Swiss American poet, but you are also somehow from Hong Kong and North Carolina and Iceland, and you're in the most unlikely of locations. You're in Western Massachusetts. and they said, you're a poet, but you're also somehow a translator and a publisher and a musician and a novelist. And as these people don't know, but I know, a novelist of best-selling status in China. How? That's the question. How is this possible? And I have fathomed this. Again, I don't want to blow my own horn, but I am a literary critic by trade. And I've fathomed this. And what it is, Mark, and I'm going to out you here, is Mark is a wizard who can bend time and space around his body. Right? And it's in the first poem I'm going to read to you, which is, and I'm happy a lot of people are reading from the Syndicate of Water and Light, because I wrote the afterword for that, you know, and so I get it, you know, on the royalties. But this is called The Pretense of a Conclusion. It's going to sound like it's long because it begins with the letter Z and works its way, or Z for the Australians and the Brits, I'll translate. But it begins with Z and you think it's going to go all the way to A, but it only makes it to W, so good. It's called The Pretense of a Conclusion. It begins with a quote from Tennyson: to strive, to seek, to find, and never yield, which, by the way, is a slight misquotation. To strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. I'm pedantic that way. All right, argument Z or Z. Mirrors of what we don't yet see. A desire to know, like being present at your own birth, and then the primordial muscle lodged in your throat that tells you to be in time, or to be in space, or better, to be in both at the same time. Argument Y. Hallucinations projecting into a future, yet somehow sensing the prickle of an inherent paradox, the je ne sais quoi of a liquid state, questions conjured up in the nest of spirits. Argument X. Did we believe what we were told, or did we assume there was a subversive subplot of pastiches, of colorful catalogs and fancy parodies, where the place of everything was actually in its antipodes? I think that's for the Australians, antipodes. Argument W. Is that why we scorned those wandering pedagogues, even when eternity surrounded every single quivering note? And there's another one also from the Syndicate of Water and Light that I'll read. I'm reading this for bad reasons. I'm reading this because it's called Dropping a Bomb on the Louvre. And that happens in my next book, which is a novel, which is coming out a year from now and will make a great gift for all occasions. But Dropping a Bomb on the Louvre. Here in the forest by the creek, like the skull of a small mammal polished by insects and rain, enveloped in loaded silence, a gun. Are the screams across the water simply the neighbors quarreling? Is anybody watching? As long as hope retains that trace of ocean green, it sweeps away all the other voices. A cipher taken on blind faith, perhaps, as between two lovers, like a dollar bill that holds no reality beyond its face. The currency offers great reward to a vibrant imagination. When did the God of faith become the God of hard cash? All those schemes extracting sunshine from the purgatory of the earth, literal or allegorical, mystical or demagogical, but pierced through with a million sorrows. A desire for things that are of this world in avaricious hands, bursting forth to weigh and clutch and hang their greatest worth. Happy birthday, Marc Vincenz.
Thank you. That was fabulous. I think, you know, Ray has said a birthday tree is better than a Devo hat, but you can maybe have a punch on about that later on. But I think it's great. Any prop is a good thing. Thank you so much. Next, we have Dewitt Henry. We knew him at Lip Balm back when he was just a number rather than a name. And now we know, and we love his poetry and we love his chair. He is founder of The Amazing Plowshares and editor at a cajillion places. He's published novels, memoirs, stories, anthologies, as well as his poetry. He's been shortlisted for all the prizes in the world, including the 2022 Penn Diamondstein Spielvogel Award for the art of the essay. DeWitt, over to you.
Okay, Mon, Jared.
Hang on, you've gone mute on us.
Which now?
Now you're better. That's better.
Okay. It will take a smart and wise an editor as Ben Mazer to select from Mark's opus. I have my own candidates, one of which Kevin just read. Both are from the Syndicate of Water and Light from 2018. Here, Kubrick's film 2001 meets T.S. Eliot's four quartets. Philosophy, science, wisdom, and wondering. How are we to process technology, baffling discoveries and new perspectives, and reconcile them with vision? Mark has an amazing range of form, reference, and expertise. The book, as fans know, is divided into sections. In this one, Sweet Colors, the poems channel virtual haiku, have titles in computer code, supposedly translated, and explore domestic as opposed to worldly love. Here, the coded title has advanced to one circle dot followed by three solid dots. Angels awaken the smile of hills and heavens. Stray, take me in, soft motion, breathing in years, moaning out. So light live upon me, sulfur heart. I think of Eliot's delicacy in his poem about Pericles Marina. Repetition is emphasis, so I'm going to read again a section from the epilogue, the penultimate apogee. A reason for living, a reason for these lines of descent and those religious excursions, echoing a holy order interlocked in its own unity. And that everything was a sign or signature of something else, the metaphor became the meaning behind matter and what mattered. A code to be deciphered by those in the know. What was once magic became mathematics. The connections counted in the hologram found the polyphony in a single quivering note. Listening to the turning of the sky, the riddle, a secret that could be unlocked by applying thought to evidence, the clues to which some divine creature has strategically placed in the great wide open. There was no other reasoning with it. It's a wonderfully accomplished, learned, wise, and ambitious book. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you for your wonderful reading. We will go on to Tim Suermondt, who's been published in so many top-notch journals. I can't possibly list them all, but he is a first-rate poet who has a book called Josephine Baker Swimming Pool from Mad Hat in 2019. And he has published 5 full-length collections of poems, unless he's done some more lately, and they weren't on the latest bio I read. Tim, I'm excited for you to be up next first.
Well, thank you, Cassandra, and for the invitation, and happy birthday, Mark. First poem I'm going to read is, I think about maybe 3 years ago or so, my wife Pooey and I were with Mark in a small cafe restaurant in Cambridge, and I remember Ben Mazer coming in and out, and Mark read this short poem or recited the short poem to us. I don't remember which, But this is the poem, and it is from Leaning into the Infinite, from a nimble-fingered mind. The needle, the awl, the pot, the brazier, the spade, the knot, the bellows, the nail and the screw, the harness, the hook and the shoe, the string, the leveler, the loom, the button, the wheel, the silent kaboom. Now, when the poet ends his work with kaboom, you know he's at the height of his power. And I will read the second one from Beautiful Rush. And well, I had to remind myself to, thinking of course, Cassandra Etherton. And I was always going to inject Cassandra's last name into the poem, which would have been interesting too. But this is called Cassandra's Designated Light. Isn't there a potential for chaos in everything we see and touch? Where's the meaning of that? If being is just listening, did I finish knowing then? To be outside of convention is the ticket, not an image one might envision upon a crinkled page. Who is the patriarch and who the master? And I in her? And who the sky that hangs above, blue and in its foul temper? And those ragged novels of romance and crime, easy to read, infused with nothing but a designated light. Didn't Mother once say we can become anything we want? Thank you. Happy birthday, Mark.
Kaboom! Thank you. That was a brilliant reading. Thanks so much. Loved it. Next, we have Pui Ying Wong, who is the author of 2 full-length books of poetry along with 2 chapbooks. A new book, The Feast, is forthcoming from Mad Hat Press. She is a Pushcart Prize recipient, and I recommend you check out her poems in Fortnightly Review from this year because they are amazing. Can we get you to read next, please?
Sure. Let's see. Happy birthday, Mark. Thank you for having me, Cassandra. You think about Mark's poem is it's really like a universe. It has everything, but I think he especially loved bees. I have picked 2 poems from your book, Mark, Becoming the Sound of Bees. And it seemed like not so long ago when you were doing the reading, the book launch at the Hastings Room in Cambridge. One of the poems was already read by Helen in Norwich, and some poems just deserve to be heard over and over again. This one is called Static. In that year that was not a year, when the days were not like days, and the sky was birdless, we listened for the sound of bees, and hearing nothing, but the wind boxed the panes, we began to hum and buzz and drone, becoming the gray matter before words. The next poem is titled Landloved. I think Mark invented this word, which is to me really amazing, and it really draws me into the poem. Much have been said about a lot of the thoughts and philosophy that came with Mark's poem, but this one to me is really rich in lyricism, which I enjoy so much. Landloved. This is the place you wanted to grow ancient, out beyond the lighthouse, where the cold is but another shade of warm, and chill is something shared and stoked with coal. Coal burns long and slow because it was once trees, and truly old trees are diamonds, all the oxygen of primal day compressed into a cold, glimmering bullet of light. When we share a bottle of your homemade wine, You hummed a sailor's tune, as if to lure mariners behind the breaking waves of stillness, comfort and oh bones. There's nothing more divine than you, oh woman, you and the smell of the sea. Happy birthday again, Mark.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful reading. Thank you. Leah Graham is up next. She is the editor of an anthology of critical essays called From the Word to the Place, the work of Michael Anania with Mad Hat Press in 2022, and the author of 2 poetry collections and 4 chapbooks. And she's won loads and loads and loads and loads of prizes for her writing. So Leah, could we please have you next?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, great. All right. Yeah. I wonder where those loads and loads of prizes really are. But anyway, I love that you have a vote of confidence. So I don't have a hat, but I do have red glasses to match my red drink. And so here's cheers to you, Mark. Happy birthday. And the thing that I want to say about Mark, beyond his own prolific and thoughtful writing, is that he is such a great supporter of other poets and other writers in general. And sometimes when I get a little depressed, where I feel like it's all about a pick me kind of economy, it's wonderful to get to be in touch with Mark and do the work that I get to do with him, because he is so incredibly generous. So happy birthday again, Mark. And it's just such a testament to all you do, that all these wonderful writers are out to read for to you and from your work. So I'm going to read a couple of his pieces from New American Writing. So yet another shout out to Paul Hoover. This is from number 39. So this is a recent issue. So the first poem, Suffering Light. Stirring into action, nuances tossed into the wind. Rumors swerving this way, that. Waves in the fields, flaring feathers, truth, non-truth, gathering like cloud formations. The girl in the picture, such a symbol of heavenly love where no one can see the memory. Half here, half not, insistence growing, not in any book, but in the theater of fear. In the model incarnation, white moonlight burns behind the sun, and the alabaster serpent, stirring into action, swerves through the pasture, heaven ready, drowning in the knee-high grass. The second poem is called Karma. How the birds have stopped singing, how the green has become gray, how your last words resonate. This is the very thing you are. A short note from the heart. I could still hear his laughs from where, while reading at the kitchen lamp, the night was windowless and the words split apart as the housefly drilled into the cracks. But there was grace here in its silent voluptuousness, bearing down upon my breast like an ocean, ignorant, old and preserving, and hunched, I walked the narrow passage into the dreams of my dreams, afraid of what it meant to be orphaned, to be departed, or the money spent on acquiring identity in the light that louvers in the I do, in the shuffling of thought between the latter and the former, in the fate of family or the smell of consequence in all its sizes, flooded in impartial stares, how the nearsighted cloud in the pain has little fear of the unknown, and the illusion of will in the small, gentle order recalls the belligerent, the delinquent, the crushed genes of atomic time, where such small quarry was the pastime of lesser gods, of forest spirits or water fry, where the sky forks away and we were reborn again, every second, Sunday among the birds. Thanks. Happy birthday again, Mark.
Thank you so much for those beautiful words and for the beautiful reading of those poems. Thank you. Next, we have Wong Ping. We know her for her brilliant live lip balm session with Gary Schneider and her dumpling poem, but she's also a professor, a poet, a writer, a photographer, and a multimedia artist. Her publications have been translated into all of the languages Mark can speak, and she's also won loads of awards. So Ping, can we have you please?
Hi, thank you so much, Cassandra, for inviting me, and happy birthday, Mark. You have I believe you actually has at least 99 lives. That's how you survive so many, and you have only used up maybe 3 lives. You have 93 or 96 more to go, and so Mark, I really enjoyed having long conversations with Mark, and on the phone we just talk about everything, including his China adventures and family dramas, and also we threaten and accuse each other for have never cooked for each other because Mark once stayed with me in Minneapolis, and I wanted to cook for him, but he told me he had a gazillion dinner and lunch plans. So why should I cook for him, right? Who's so popular. People are fighting to take him out. So I just gave him bagel and cream cheese, and he never let me forget. So happy birthday, Mark. And I have received so many gifts from Mark for his books. And I also have many other books he didn't give me. And we talked a lot about poetry, actually, poetics and its sound, musicality, and image, and especially about sound poems. So I picked 2 poems, especially just every time I read it, I'm just shocked by how musically it is. And so one is Rembrandt's Last Fruit for K. 'Cause you'd like to ask God how long it took him to build an apple, and if the first was red or green, if it fit in the heart of the palm between the lifeline and the mind, and if there were snapshots of the first crunch, perhaps he would say each was a masterpiece, each perfect and spectacularly flawed, and every single seed conveniently inserted with children's fingers. 'Cause you'd like to know what the devil said, something about the seed being more than a metaphor. We all know it's easier to build an empire with many little fingers. God may be the eye of geometry, but it isn't. But isn't it still boggling how apples have spread across the globe, lending power and meaning to what is yet to come? Surely the soul of a woman is the sum of all her walks. So I ask you, what can enlighten a life any more than a pair of sturdy shoes? Such a beautiful poem. I chose this also because I just literally came back a few hours from Boston. I was practicing for the Charles River, head of the Charles River regatta. And I visited the old graveyard where Increase Mather and his son Cotton Mather, the 2 biggest witch hunters, were buried. And and I did some research about Salem, the trials of Salem, and then I just want to read this poem, so beautiful for women. Thank you for writing this poem, Mark. And the other one is called Far Planet. A sky tilted towards the world, blooming in phosphorescence. But where to begin? once moving, to shuffle toward those old angels, where the membranes of space bend and curve, and the snow that once was is imagined in a room, with the ashes and the silence by the fire. How young we seem in that old weight of inexorable hours. Thank you, Mark, and happy birthday again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it. We had Dean up next, but I'm not sure he's still here. Dean, are you still here? I know he had to dash, so we might just, unless he yells out, I will go to the amazing Susan Dickey, who is a stellar poet and translator, as well as a famous architectural historian, and I also think a philosopher. She has just finished translating The Brilliant Roundness of the Possible by Jose Enrique del Monte, and I hope we also might see a book of her own poetry out one of these days. So Susan, you are up next.
Thank you, Cassandra. You're so kind. I'm going to read from Sibylline. It's a book about architecture in Rome. And I think that Mark and I were on the same journey around the same time. He must have written this. Perhaps, I don't know. But it is perhaps his most, his book that's most architectural than the others I've read, though I love them all. It was very difficult to choose a book to read from. So I'll begin with The Heart of a Building. Transverberation, fragrant hymns of praise, a divine celebration, the smoke of creation, journeys that do not end. Surpassing the sweetness of pain, the institution's divine right to rule. What is the vocabulary of power? You can't read the features until you're up close to the travails, observe the naked benevolence, the descent from the cross with only one hand on the reins, on the arcs and the swirls, oh, where the eye cannot focus as one myth assails another, and suffused with nostalgia within the shadows of sculpted space. In the everyman of every day, departing for the Isle of Cythera. And next I'm going to read Into a Desert. A good pagan god lives within us, she said, like her counterparts, smelling of salts and spices, following a horizontal wind that stiffens the eyes. Would one night's sleep so soon be over? All these visitations in the dark. Oh, friends, do you see her dappling the shore? She's laid watch over you for centuries. Swirl that glass of wine. Pull your thoughts from the olive plate. For those of you who toe the hard line, watch the sleepy-eyed child air out your lighthouses. Only this ominous, whispering, three-eyed creation might sail the air with you, might encourage your instinct to speak its mind. Or are you just water living in a clock? There are words only minnows know, and in the early morning at 4:45, when the palm frogs bellow, they see eternity's immobile double doors. A good God behaves, of course. Time follows.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful reading. Thank you, Susan. Next, we have John Wesick, who is a poet wombat lover, and his writing has been described as fascinating, deeply subversive, and ironic. We love him at Lip Balm. He knows everything that is worth knowing and more, and he's published hundreds of thousands of poems and stories and won hundreds and thousands of prizes. He's regional editor of the San Diego Poetry Annual, and his most recent novel is The Enigma Brokers. But he'll correct me if any of that is wrong, or that he's got extra things going on too. So, John.
Okay, I am unmuted. Actually, the most recent novel is The Prague Deception, but that's okay. That's in between us. So I was trying to calculate the probability of two people reading the same poem of Mark's, and I came up with 6%. So who knows? I mean, I have a signed copy here of Leaning into the Infinite. And so if I'm reading a poem that somebody else has read, I'd like Cassandra to just yell out, "We've heard that one already," and I'll go read something else. Change glasses here. Hold on a second here. All right. Have you heard when Uncle Fernando conjures up a dead bird theory of everything?
Nope.
Okay, chapter 1, in which our dead bird speaks of epic change in a foreign tongue. In your own myopic view, you exist only as part of your own narrative, nonplussed by mass and those bundles of positive energy. Deep in Jin, you ask, are there really universal truths? When particles become fields and fields not underlining but dragon flying on top of a deadpan description, symbols based on the metaphor of a bird that dies in the natural philosophy of its own groundbreaking design, and with the ice clinking, unpeeling the layers of this reality shows how restless you are even at this hour. For no matter how silent or how softly something deadly moves, even a bird squashed on a little-known path to Eden is anything truly at rest. And yes, light is bending toward all that gravity, conveying on something resembling to a straight line. In this billionth of a second, are we just leaves floating upon an endless Orinoco, Ganges, or Amazon? On the other hand, who cares what occurs 4 billion years from now? What is it then about immortality, that bizarre notion of newness, the sharp pinch of loose fingers on loose skin, when there really are no words on this page? And isn't every word mired in what already occurred? Being is purely a trick of light caught in a blurring of the here and that visual cortex, weaving in and out of the sky, meeting a sea, and upon its surface 2 bolts of lightning hurling. And didn't we arrive here in a cloud of toxic gas amidst a whirl of radiation, our collective histories converging upon something only visible in its own becoming? You ponder the meaning of all that infinitude. I have been told the best thing to do is to stare into the smallest distance, deep into a zero volume, for there is no such thing as needed. Even in the excesses of a wild imagination, several times you've mentioned your immutable sense of loss, watching those ancient footprints lead away, and how you feel somehow everything needs to be made up. There's something else. And here's this short one here. In the Flesh. Have you heard that one today? No, hey, boy, my calculation of probability is actually turning out right. With feet and hands like foreign lands, they pluck their way through space, encroach not upon themselves, but upon each other's borders in the flesh. A denouement tinkling in whiskeyed ice cubes, almost touching that falling quiet in a fingering of pauses, then somewhere the shuffle of great-grandfather's boots. For what is a state, says one old man to another, but a way of seeing things, and fate, says the other deep in his eyebrows, but a way of seeing things. It is in the flesh we meet upon foreign lands, edging closer, each a fool touching his othermost. And to the man who lives where there are more candles, cake, and wrapping paper than people, have a happy birthday.
Nice touch, John. Awesome. Thank you. Next, we have Cindy Hochman. She is Brooklyn's unofficial poet laureate and general badass poet. She once sat on Allen Ginsberg's lap, and she's friends with Marianne Faithfull, so beat that. She has a brilliant chapbook of poetry coming out called Telling You Everything, and her readings in open mic are some of our favorites for how memorable they are. So Cindy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cassandra, and happy, healthy, creative, beautiful, blessed birthday, Mark. I'm very honored to be among this luminous group reading. And for you, Mark, I even wore my badass poet shirt. But I didn't wear it to the drugstore. They'd look at me funny. I found two poems of Mark's on the internet. One is from Survision magazine, which I heard about through Lit Balm, of course. And I sent him some work and he published it, and I'm a big fan of Survision. And I chose these two poems because I like short poems, and these say a lot in few lines, which I'm always impressed by. And plus I love the titles and the last lines especially. The first one is called On a Scale of 1 to Fish. Oh, to be desired, and to be desired back so easily. Yes, I know the timpani rolls, the crashing cymbals of reality. We were jaded in the scale, just above where the fleshy part dwells, or perhaps on another scale, we had found the best flesh. A sunrise always helps. That line is incredible. The next one Cassandra will appreciate. It is a short prose poem. And I found this one in Black Sun magazine. Yay, Black Sun. They're great. It's called More Misdeeds. And of course, I love the title because I love hearing about Mark's misdeeds. Once again, thinking the unthinkable. All those optimisms deserve a punishment. The supreme being, flying or swimming, elusive, multifaceted, free, hypothetical, pulverized, without an ounce of meaning. Therefore, a problem for the gods. Quite on the horns of the dilemma, snagged on the peaks. In a word, we'll see what happens next. And I hope what happens is a beautiful year for you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Always a joy on Lip Balm. And our lucky last, you know who he's going to be? It's going to be Bob Heman. He constructs brilliant collages and writes mostly prose poems. He's been published on every continent except Antarctica, but I've got a good feeling about Antarctica. I say Antarctica 2022 for you, Bob. His most recent books include The House of Grand Farewells and the number 5 is Always Suspect. They are collaborations with Cindy, and Cone Transformed. He was an editor in residence at the Brooklyn Museum, and he has the most famous kitchen in the world. Bob, can you finish up the birthday celebration readings, please?
Yes, I can. And happy birthday, Mark. Okay, both of these I found on the internet. And the second one was actually an alternative choice because 2 other people read the poem before it got to me. So, baking bread, cooking something up after midnight, stirring up a potent brew, omens for whom the bell tolls, and so forth. To grasp the mouse in all its shrieking fury, to shudder at the screech of a bat, to wait for that raccoon or bear to make its entrance. You are late, they say. The bear winds up his organ and invites you to dance. Okay, and this one is called All the Stops. Those erroneous myths of the sheep and the man and the cow and the cowl. Forget the man, move to the sea, over the mountain, date and creek. Move to the graduations, to the geographic tongue, or the archipelago of mind time, space, the mythological frontier of civilization, and the stars, or the cow leaping over the moon, or the stork on her way to the newborn, or the man in the moon who is a rabbit or hare, who passed messages to these all, who pass messages to those of us who are, I'm sorry, the type is small on this, who pass messages to those of us who care to hear. And yet here I stand, not enormous, but small, living in the longing.
Fantastic. Who would have thought? Mark's poems coming out of Bob's kitchen. Mark, over to you for a final word, I think. It's been amazing. I wish I had so many luminaries as friends.
Well, what can I say? It's been amazing to hear all these different voices kind of interpreting my poems, and I think I'm gonna have to process it, you know. It's been quite fascinating, and yeah, I'll have a lot more to say about it later. But meantime, thank you everyone. It was just amazing. Thank you all for showing up, and thank you for being my friends. And so next time round, on September 3rd, which is next weekend, we have Tara Betts, Saida Agostini Bostile, and Terry Ellen Cross Davies. So join us for that, and really do join us for that. And thank you so much for tonight, and send you all my love and appreciation, and live in the spirit. Good night, guys.
Happy birthday.
Oh, we have a birthday song.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mark. Happy birthday to you.
That's why we're poets and not singers, right?
Absolutely. The best present would be for us not to sing, but oh well.
Probably true. Good night. Well, good morning from Australia, but good night, everyone. Bye.
Hey.